Welcome to the second edition of the Slate Valley Superintendent's Podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Olsen-Farrell, Superintendent of Slate Valley Schools, and I'm here with our Director of Curriculum, Casey O'Mara, who's in his 7th year in our district. Thank you for being with us today, Casey.
Thank you. So
to start out, can you tell us what exactly a Director of Curriculum does?
It's a great question. So, as Director of Curriculum in Slate Valley, I spend a good amount of time talking with teachers about what it is their experiences are like in classrooms, figuring out how best to support them, working with principals and other leaders in our district around what resources they might need to support what they're hearing from teachers, manage some grants. We're fortunate to receive monies that allow us to identify students that might not be achieving in ways that we want them to, and we get money from the federal government to better support them. So I work with our Director of Finance pretty closely on that. But generally speaking, I work with teachers, I work with principals, and then manage some grants and monies to support student learning.
Great, thank you. Certainly sounds like a lot.
It's enjoyable.
So how are we preparing students for the future here in Slate Valley?
I'd say always a focus of ours is to make certain that students' literacy and math skills and kind of critical thinking are kind of appropriate for whatever life looks like for every student as they exit the high school. So we make certain that we identify at each grade level what kind of academic expectations, Common Core curriculum or other documents are saying they should be, and then working on different skills that we identify as kind of pro-social skills, so that students, when they enter into whether it's the workforce, the military, or college, that they have kind of habits that allow them to be successful. They know how to kind of address a letter to someone, but they also know how to look someone in the eye and shake a hand and those sorts of things. And so that's a lot of the work that takes place, in classrooms. And then we have recently, in the past 5 years, really tried to provide students with opportunities outside of the classroom to kind of test those skills academically and then behaviorally. And so we've been partnering with a lot of different community organizations. And so we have some field trips that go, say, to Hubbardton Forge. We have students making meals for Fairhaven Concerned and kind of delivering meals. Recently I was on a field trip to Books Lumber, and then we went to the Mint in Rutland, kind of focusing on woodworking skills. But in those different experiences, there's other adults, and kids kind of have to, behave appropriately and kind of ask questions and navigate the world outside of a classroom. So we've tried to build in those experiences across our school districts. I guess one I would also highlight is some of the work that we do with Castleton University, with bringing students over there for different events, whether it's something in the theater or the Hidden History Project at the Granger House at Castleton. So really trying to prepare students, at each grade level, having them have some exposure to, life outside of school, but then also, very important to us, literacy, math, science, social studies, and the skills of reading and writing and math. So, say there's a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say our end goal is for students? So when they graduate from high school, what is the plan? What is the vision for our students?
No, that's a tough one. I mean, the ideal would be that a student would be able to let us know that they have a plan and that it's something that they are invested in. And so whether that is taking a year off and traveling, or getting a job and saving money, that they feel invested in that for reasons that make them excited about it, and that we could say to them, yeah, looking back at the courses you've taken, looking back at the extracurricular activities you've been a part of, that we feel like we've had some part in helping prepare you for that next step, and then hopefully helping with that excitement as you move into those next steps of life. I'd say those might not be as quantifiable. So we do look at some survey data as students exit. We look at college acceptance. We look at percentage of graduating class that's going into the military. Who has kind of certificates that they've been able to gain while in high school, whether that's through Stafford or something in terms of workplace preparedness that we could track to see if that end goal is being met. But I'd say that's an area that I think we continue to try to think about. And then I know you and I have a lot of conversations, and we talk a lot with our guidance department, et cetera, around what's it look like year 2 and year 3 when someone graduates. Like, is someone able to stay in college or stay in a job, or if they haven't necessarily defined a career, do they move from, say, working in a job that they had in high school to something that might afford them kind of a broader career that would allow them to move to a different part of the country or something. So I think those are areas we still are probably trying to figure out how to quantify, I guess, get better data on.
Absolutely. So you spoke a little bit about some of our community partnerships, Hubbardton Forge, the recent trip to Books Lumber, and the Mint. Can you talk a little bit about where the idea came from for that, and what's the ultimate goal in doing that community outreach and establishing those partnerships?
Where it originated, I'd say, I can't remember. When I arrived in 2018, I think you were already developing a strategic plan. I think there was a revamp of the mission and a vision, and I think you probably had it as a goal, as everyone has always, about how to better connect with the community so that people felt like the school was a part of the community and the community a part of the school, even if you don't have students that are in the school district. And so I think maybe that may have been the origin, or some part of the origin. And so at different points we've had different people working in certain roles where we've tried to build these databases, or the old term maybe a Rolodex, of who is available in our community, who might be able to host a student, for them to get some sort of work placement skill, or again practicing some of those pro-social behaviors or that academic learning they've had in a classroom. And so we've identified not only kind of what I call anchor institutions like Hubbardton Forge, Castleton University, or the hospital in Rutland, but then also just individuals in our community. We have a student who's at Avalanche, it's called. It's kind of a large diesel shop. I think there might be 3 or 4 employees, and that opportunity for the student came kind of word of mouth through folks. So I think it's somewhat of an organic process in terms of like finding those locations. I'd say something that was pretty purposeful on our part, again, whether it was when I started or soon after, was making certain that we put in the program of studies career exploration course, that we had someone who is up to date on the work-based learning kind of parameters that came out of Act 77, which allowed students to go off campus and make certain that we had protections in terms of insurance and background checks and that sort of thing. So I think we've been purposeful about making certain that we can have those course offerings, and then have, I think we're on our 3rd or 4th person that's been in that role, so we continue to maintain some of the in-house knowledge of how to do those things as turnover happens. I'd say the goal, in an ideal setting, would be that every student would be able to identify an experience they've had outside of, a classroom, again, that allowed them to identify an area of interest or something that they no longer have an interest in, but they had once thought, that then we could check in on after they've graduated or as they approach graduation about like, what is your plan? Do you feel excited about your plan? So an ideal would be that all students, have some sort of experience with a community partner. Sorry, kind of long-winded with this question. I'd say, as an aside, a director of curriculum, but also who works across the system in a central office, we talk a lot about how it is we can demonstrate the value of what the taxpayers put in to a student's education, and so recognizing that people are voters and that we want them to see students and that they do have an immediate kind of connection with someone and can see the value, so they can ask questions of us, but also hopefully have a good feeling about what we're doing, and then maybe positively see the budgets that we put forth as really preparing students, and so ultimately continuing to support our goals financially as we develop programs and prepare students for a future. So I guess that's also kind of one of the goals, is making certain that the community sees that they're a part of what we're doing, and we can continue to successfully support budgetarily our goals.
So speaking of community value, taxpayers, budget approval, 25 years ago, and we've both been in education about that.
Crazy.
Test scores were
Yes.
super important, and a way in which the community judged the success of a school district. So can you speak to what is the role of the standardized test scores in Slate Valley, or maybe even in Vermont as a whole, and perhaps what some changes have been in the last 25 years at, using test scores as a
Sure.
central focus.
Yep. Test scores of any sort, so specifically like the standardized test scores that all high school students at certain ages take in Vermont.
And what are those ages?
Oh goodness, so I think it starts in 3rd grade and it goes through 9th grade for ELA and math, and then science is 5, 8, and 11? I think. Okay.
Yes.
I know you know. That was a test. I passed! So they do have a place, and I think that place is making certain that I can respond when asked questions about how it is we're supporting different trends we see across our system, and do we see kind of growth as people are moving from 1st to 2nd to 3rd, and I know they don't start until 3rd grade, but we have other assessments we use in those earlier grades, to say to folks that are looking at those scores, yes, students can read, yes, students are growing, but it might be at a different rate, and let us show you what that looks like. But then also, if we see consistently in 3rd grade that year after year we're having some sort of challenge and the scores dip there, what is my response? What are we doing? And are we looking into that? So I think it does have a role for sure. And so I know in the time that I've been here, everyone takes very seriously the fact that we want students to grow in their academic abilities. And so this is one piece that we use as a check on our system. I'd say as the students get older, there can be a lot more questions from them about why these tests matter. And I think we've tried many different ways, and that's been the case in the 23 years I've been in education, of kind of enticing older students to see the value and the challenge of an assessment. And so when thinking about a 9th grade or an 11th grade or an 8th grade score, sometimes we need to step back and really drill down and look at individual student scores, and then compare those to some internal assessments we use, then also grades and those sorts of things. Also, when you look at those individual student scores, if you look at them in 8th grade and 9th grade, and you look at where they were in 3rd grade, if they're behind or ahead, how far behind or how far ahead are they? Is that a trend that we see? So those are ways in which we use that data. I think when you get into the high school realm, SATs, PSATs, ASVAB, there are other assessments that might be a little more meaningful to students. And so whether you're going to the military and using the assessment to go into the military, or if you're thinking you might be college bound, I think there's other ways we look at data when students get older. I mentioned a little bit about the internal data that we use. So school districts use assessments that screen students, and then 3 times a year we kind of benchmark and say, all right, we're a quarter of the year, or a third of the year rather, through a school year, what does it look like for student A compared to all the other students in the United States, as these different internal tools are normed compared to other students taking the assessment at the same age or grade.
And I know you don't have the data sitting in front of you, but on those benchmark assessments, holistically, what are we seeing over the last year and a half as a trend?
Yeah, I'd say it was an impact of our not being in school for a little while, of being remote, and so we're still working through that. I would say as it relates to that, we are maintaining, but we're not making up ground. And so we're not seeing that we're able right now to grow students 2 to 3 years in 1 year's time. And I'm not sure if we'll see a change there. But what I will say is that we're seeing students meeting expected growth in a given year. So in 1 year's time, is someone moving from wherever they were to wherever they are at the end at the expected rate that everyone else in the country is. And we're seeing literacy being an area of strength, continues to be. I think it probably always has been. And math is an area that we're not quite as strong in. And so recently we've made some shifts in our approaches to math. We recognize that potentially one of the ways math results could improve is the way in which we approach the use of manipulatives, and just kind of using different tools, things that students can move around and build and make, as opposed to always doing kind of worksheets. Sure, yeah, visualize, and have some level of engagement that might be different than in a problem set on the board and then on a piece of paper. So that's exciting. I know our educators are very excited about making that shift. They, in fact, approached me about it, and we took our time kind of researching, looking what other districts were doing. We dipped our toe in the water with doing one part of the program to start, made certain we felt comfortable with that, and then this is our first year in the launch for that math program, in hopes that our math scores will improve, maybe at a similar rate that literacy is.
And I know instructional.